All right, so I've got my animation here that I've done in previous steps. I've got two layers, one for dots, one for a path. My path layer is set as a guided path, um, and it's also kind of made a little bit transparent. So I've got that done there, and it's looking pretty dynamic. It moves, it's fast, it moves forward, backwards, and so got a dynamic motion happening here. What I want to do is create a background for this. I'm going to change the color of the background for first. At first, you can change the stage, but that's not going to. The stage color doesn't matter when we create a movie file out of this. So what we have to do is actually create a new layer here. So I'm going to go to a new layer. I've got my other layers locked down, and I'm going to create a rectangle that covers over everything here. And I'm going to choose a good color, and I'm going to keep in mind I'm going to bring in my logo from previous project. So use a color scheme that might look good or complement your logo that you have from that previous project. So I've got that chosen. I don't want it to be too dark because I have some black writing in there, and I don't want it to be too light because I already have white in my logo as well. So I'm going to find something that looks good with that, and I'm going to drag over the whole stage. Now I covered over everything, which isn't ideal, and it goes beyond my stage. That part's fine, but I don't want it. Notice that it's now at the very end of my timeline because I left my marker down here. I don't want it to only show up at the very last frame. So if yours ends up someplace else that's not the first frame, you can click and drag that keyframe. So I'm going to click on that and drag it to the front and drop it there. So now it's there the whole time. But now the problem is it's covering everything else up. So I'm going to take this layer, which I'm going to rename background. I just double clicked on it and rename it background. And I'm going to take that layer and drag the name underneath dots. And so now at least my dots show up there over that background. I'm going to lock that down. I don't really need to see that. My path, I don't need to see that either. You shouldn't see it because your background is over it, but I'm just going to hide the visibility of that as well. So that does not show either. Now, I've got all that set. Going back to our logo design, just want to create something kind of nice and easy. A way to bring my logo into action on my stage here and animate. But I don't want it just to be there while my dot's moving around. So I'm going to add some extra frames here to my animation. I'm going to click and drag over these frames, and I'm going to add at least a couple seconds to start. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to insert frames. So now I've got all of these added a couple extra seconds. Now when I do that, I see my dot just sticks around. It doesn't go anywhere. I don't really want that, so I'm going to, on this frame right after my last keyframe for that dot, I want to unlock that layer, and I'm going to right click on that frame. I want to insert a blank keyframe. So that means it goes away, right? And then there's nothing there. And the reason there's nothing there is because this is where I'm going to bring in my logo design from Illustrator. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to go to File. You want to make sure you know where your logo is. Your Illustrator file. You're going to bring it in from Illustrator, not another JPEG or another file. It's got to be your project file from Illustrator. So I'm going to go to File, and then I'm going to go to Import and Import to Stage. I'm going to find my project file, and I know it's my project file because it says AI, and this little orange icon right here. And this is my one that I want to use, Only Shark Animation logo. And I'm going to select that and open it up. And it says which artboard. I want artboard 1. It's the only one that I have, but some of you might have multiple artboards. So choose the one that you want to bring in. This is the artwork that I want to bring in, which is good. And it says incompatibility report, but I'm just going to ignore that right now. I'm going to go to import. So now it brought in my new logo, and it brought it in at the very beginning. So to change that, what I want to do first is I want my logo to kind of appear where my ball ends. You don't have to do yours this way. You can have yours animated some other way. But I want this to show up right here. So as this is there, notice that it moved because I just moved it from one place to another. If I move it again, it's going to, on a different frame, it's going to save that location. And so I don't want this one here. So I'm going to right click on this one and I can clear that keyframe. Let's see. All right. So now this one is saved. I'm going to take that and I want to drag it all the way down here. And it says, oh no, invalid instance name. So we have to fix something. Up here in object, I'm going to change this to graphic and I'm going to change this to logo. And that shouldn't bother us anymore. So now where this dot ends, my shark animation logo will begin. And something simple I'm going to do to animate this, I'm going to show kind of a quick example of how to create a tween. A tween is basically a way that Animate will fill in some animation for you, and you don't have to do everything from frame to frame. So here I have my animation, or my logo is in place right here. I'm going to use my free transform tool, and I'm going to hold shift and shrink this down. And I'm going to move it so it covers up that dot. Now, I don't want it to always stay small. That'd be a terrible info or motion graphic if my logo stayed tiny. I want it to be readable. I want this to be something that would be interesting in some way for a customer or for a client. And so I'm going to make this get larger. So I'm going to make this expand. I'm going to make it come out. I'm going to go a few layers out, and you can get the timing right for your own animation. And right here, I have this highlighted. I'm going to expand this really big. And so now it goes from that to that. And here's where tween comes into play. I'm going to right click anywhere between these two. I'm going to go create Classic Tween. And now it does that. It expands, right? Now it's too big. So I have to tone this down. You can do this. You can resize things. You can rotate things. You can move them across your screen and create, as long as you have two different keyframes, you can create a tween between those keyframes. So it gets really big, and let's say I want it to snap back to size right here. So I'm going to shrink it down and right click inside and create Classic Tween again. So it's going to boom, boom, right? Simple, effective. I'm going to lock down my dots layer. I should have done that earlier. And then I want that to stick around. If I wanted to do more animation to it, I could do that too. Like I said, you can make things rotate, you can turn them around, you can spin them, you can make them move off the screen. So for instance, if I said, okay, right here, I want this to swim off the screen, then I can take this and move it this way, add classic frame, and it'll get big and then start to swim off. But typically you want your animation to stick around long enough for your client or whoever, potential customer, to see and read your logo and what it is. So I'm going to undo that. And instead, what I might do is hold that position. So I could take this, I could copy that frame. I can come over here, paste the frame. So it stays there for that. And then maybe here is where I have my animation start to swim off. Or maybe at the very end. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it out here. I add my keyframe, or right click here in between my keyframes, go to Classic Tween, and then it swims off. So something simple. Come up with a couple creative ways that you can create keyframes out of your animation. And then the next thing we're going to show is how to export this as a video. If you wanted to create more layers, I should take this and name it logo. If you want to create more layers and animate things or animate something in the background with your logo, you could definitely do that as well. So it's all about adding keyframes, and if you want those objects to move on those keyframes, then you can definitely create some tweens to make it do that. So have fun with this. Come up with a creative way to make your logo move. Other things you can do with this is you can make something. Let me see here. Let me duplicate this layer, and I'm going to lock and hide this one down. And let's say instead of this one, swimming off, what if this one instead faded out? So if I did a color effect on this one, and color effect is alpha to make it 100%, which means opacity, notice it creates a white keyframe right here, because now I am changing the object here and creating an effect on it. If I go out here on the last frame and I change the effect to 0 on the alpha, notice what it did here. So white, bright, and then nothing. And then in between, I can create a classic tween there as well. So instead of it zooming off, maybe I fade it out. And there's a lot of different effects and things that you can do and apply to your objects. If you look either under objects, you can find color effects, brightness, tint, advanced options, alpha again. You can play around with those different effects and see what you can do. Create some tweens. Come up with at least a couple of different ways that you can animate this guy. So have fun with this, and we'll see you on the next one.